Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman-Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for listening. Today we're chatting with investigator, author, and founder of Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, Clarissa Vasquez. Clarissa has authored several paranormal books, including Ghost Hunting in Colorado, Phantom Trains and Haunted Rails of the U.S., and the Phantom Hitchhiker Project and America's Haunted Roadways, just to name a few. She founded Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators in 2004 and has been investigating many locations since. You can find more about Clarissa Vasquez and the CCPI at coloparanormal.com or at clarissavasquez.com. Her books are available on her website, Amazon, Kindle, and wherever fine books are sold. You can find the links in the show notes as usual. Hey, Clarissa, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So you founded CCPI in 2004. So how did you get into the paranormal to begin with and want to found a investigating team?
So my journey into paranormal research, or more specifically ghost hunting, started almost 30 years ago when I was active duty in the military. And I encountered a ghost, and it didn't occur to me at all to be frightened by what I was experiencing. And the internet was in its infancy and paranormal TV wasn't a thing yet. So I went to the local library off base and started reading every book I could get my hands on, books by Ed Warren and Hans Holzer. And from there, I learned a couple of, different techniques involved an analog tape recorder and a Polaroid camera. I don't know, I may be dating myself there by mentioning those things, but I started practicing around a little bit, going to reported creepy haunted locations near where I was stationed. Fast forward to 2003-ish, a mutual friend of mine by the name of Chade Oplenop, he and I discovered that we had, this shared fascination for all things ghostly, and that, we had each independently done some amateur investigating. And so we started, running around to purported haunted locations in the town that we lived in. Word got out, and people started calling us up going, hey, you need to come check out my house, or you need to check out my buddy's office. It spread like wildfire. And so in 2004, CCPI was born. Back then it was Chade and Clarissa's Paranormal Investigations, and it grew beyond our wildest expectations to the point where we had to recruit some help. And so we started taking on other members and changed it from Chade and Clarissa's Paranormal Investigations to Colorado Coalition. And we've been running strong for 18 years now. We are one of the longest running teams in the state of Colorado, second only to Rocky Mountain Paranormal, who they've been around since 98, I think. We're still going strong. We're 10 members strong right now. Of course that fluctuates. People come and go as time passes. But right now there's 10 of us, and we've developed some really interesting research projects over the years. The Phantom Hitchhiker Project being one of them. We still go to homes and businesses where people believe they are encountering ghostly activity and check that out. And we have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah. That's it's interesting to have a team for that long, because unfortunately there's so many that kind of implode. But and like you said, people come and go, but to have a team around that long, and that's pretty awesome that you've been doing it longer for the TV shows and things like that. I've been doing this for 25 years, so yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I think we're all influenced by that if you watch them, but I think for the most part to have started when you could think for yourself in a way. I don't mean that to sound like it sounds, but without being influenced by that, because I started out back probably when I was a teenager, a little bit before that, before 2004, and yeah, just kind of making your own way in the paranormal. I guess what I'm getting at is a little more pure, I guess, than having the pop culture influence we have now.
Right. Well, and I think you'll agree with me based on what you just said. The paranormal television shows have done a lot. They've done a lot of good, and they've done a lot of bad for the field of paranormal investigation. The good that they've done is they've really removed the stigma attached to talking about and admitting you've had an experience.
Yeah.
30 years ago, it was very taboo to say, I saw a ghost or I think my house is haunted. People would think you're crazy.
Right.
And, along come these paranormal TV shows. And now, fast forward, it is now acceptable and absolutely okay to say, hey, I think there's a ghost in my house, or I believe I've seen a UFO, or I believe, I had an encounter with Sasquatch. These TV shows have really done a lot to remove the stigma attached. Now, the flip side of that coin is, like you said, there's a lot of fly-by-night organizations, a lot of amateurs that, they go out there just thrill seeking, and, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to use the equipment. They're just out there hoping to replicate what they've seen on television.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, most of that is fabricated. So, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and here on the show, I preach all the time. Audiences, we preach all the time. The shows are entertainment. Just take them as entertainment. There are plenty of people out there doing real events that you can see, real investigating and what we actually do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The legitimate organizations are the ones that have the longevity. They have the strict policies. They have references.
Right.
And, the fly-by-night teams are the ones that go in emulating the guy in the too tight T-shirt, the man, show yourself, demon. And that's really sad. Over the years, we have been called in to clean up messes left by other teams that have come in and didn't know what they were doing or didn't care, made a situation worse.
Yeah, and I think, if you want to go out and go ghost hunting at a location with friends and rent it out, you're not really hurting anybody by doing that. But yeah, go into people's homes and when you don't know what you're doing and you're just emulating what's going on TV is definitely, you can create a bigger mess because you don't know what you're doing. And then, like you said, you have to come in, somebody that has to come in and kind of clean up your mess, because you can actually make it worse for the family. Yep,
you sure can. And we've been called in more times than I can count to clean up another organization's mess. And lo and behold, that organization has disbanded, not too long after we have to go and clean up their mess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of a sad downfall of the ghost hunting craze.
It is. But, there are organizations such as CCPI out there. We've got the longevity, we've got the knowledge, and we love what we do, which is why we do not charge at all. We keep our services 100% free and completely confidential. And we love what we do. We're in it to help people. We're not in it for fame and fortune. And so we're happy to help, even if it is cleaning up somebody else's mess.
Yeah, and I would also tell people if somebody wants to charge you to come in to their home and come into your home and investigate, run the other way. Go find somebody else.
Absolutely. Even if they're asking for an expense reimbursement, that's not, they're not in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, because I've done private investigations as well, and we come into it, as I'm sure y'all do. I mean, just out of the wanting to help, and because these people have nobody else to turn to, and because we have the experience to help them, or even if it's something out of our realm, we have a network of people that we know and trust that can come in and help if we can't do anything. Right. Yeah, and you kind of need that. Yeah.
Yeah, CCPI, we serve Western Colorado and Eastern Utah. So anything west of the Continental Divide, we cover. And we get calls for the Eastern Slope regularly. Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, Greeley. We get called all up and down the Front Range, and that's just, that's 3 or more hours from our service area. And it's just not feasible for us to, drop what we're doing and travel 3 or 4 hours to investigate and then have to travel 3 or 4 hours back. So we do have sister teams over on the Front Range, that they have the same principles and methodologies that we do, that we can throw cases their way if we get something that's outside of our service area.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about your latest book, The Phantom Hitchhiker Project and America's Haunted Roadways. And how did y'all get into doing the Phantom Hitchhiker Project? Because this is kind of the reason the book caught my attention, and you were nice enough to send me a copy. Thank you for that.
Of course.
The reason it caught my attention because I haven't seen any other books like this or anybody specifically focusing on this type of phenomena. So how did y'all get into researching and investigating the Phantom Hitchhiker?
So this started back in 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. I know the project officially launched in 2010. And I was in college taking an English composition class, and I had to write this massive research paper on any given topic. And so I have always been and continue to be an advocate for paranormal research being recognized as a legitimate form of scientific research. And so I chose that as my topic, and I could not find any kind of scholarly journals or any kind of documentation to back up my thesis, because in my heart of hearts, I knew it could be done. And so I started reaching out to some pretty big names in the field. I spoke to Lloyd Auerbach. I spoke to Barry Fitzgerald. I spoke to a bunch of people. And I said, what do you think about this? And the common thing that kept coming back to me in all of the replies that I got was that, no, it cannot be conducted scientifically because we don't conduct our experiments in a lab. And I took that and threw it right out the window. The way I view what we do is very similar to what archaeologists, paleontologists, zoologists, biologists do. They go out into the field and collect their data and then bring it back to the lab for analysis. And that's what we do. We go out into the field and we collect our data. I don't use the term evidence. Evidence is something you can prove in court. We collect data. And so we go out into the field, we collect our data, and then we bring it back to the quote-unquote lab for analysis, whether that's somebody's dining room table or their office or, frequently, my bed. So I will sit in bed, with my laptop and my headphones, going, pouring through the data that we collected. So, the whole argument that, we don't conduct our experiments in a lab, threw that one out. The second one was there are too many controls or too many variables and not enough controls. So that was really what spawned the Phantom Hitchhiker Project. I started thinking about this, like, how can I do this with a series of controls and variables in a controlled environment where I can replicate my results? Because that's another key part of being able to conduct things scientifically. You have to be able to duplicate your results. And so I, driving down the road and I'm seeing, roadside crosses, at various parts along Interstate 70.
Yeah.
And I went, I wonder. And so I started thinking about it more and more and more. And really that's how the Phantom Hitchhiker Project was born. What we did was we developed a research project that includes a series of controls and variables, and all of this is listed in the book. The original research paper and the original project parameters are in that book. We went to roadside locations where a vehicle accident resulted in at least one human fatality to see if there was GPT, geographic psychic trauma, attached to those locations and subsequent phantom hitchhikers. Because there's a phantom hitchhiker story in almost every state in the country.
Yeah.
So, it's like, well, what's behind these phantom hitchhikers? Is it these car crashes? Are these car crashes leaving an energy imprint on the land that's resulting in phantom hitchhikers? And so we implemented a series of controls right down to the equipment that we use, the time, the temperature, and the lunar phase during which we conducted these experiments. The exact same equipment was used. The exact same EVP questions were asked in the exact same order. We fine-tuned it as much as we possibly could. And the project ran for 10 years. And I will tell you, one of the first things people ask me is, so are there phantom hitchhikers at these roadside locations where you see all the crosses? And I will tell you that the experiment was what I call a successful failure, because we did not determine that these roadside locations resulted in phantom hitchhikers, but we did conclude that ghost hunting specifically can be conducted scientifically.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, we just spent 10 years on this research project and didn't accomplish what we hoped to accomplish, but look at what we did.
Yeah, and doing a project that big and have so much data to prove that you can do it in a scientific way. So with the one of the questions that I have with the geographic psychic trauma, how does that differ from like your residual hauntings? Because I know a lot of people are familiar with residual haunting, but they're kind of different.
Well, geographic psychic trauma it's very similar to a residual haunting in that it's the actual energy imprint from something so violent or traumatic happening in that spot. So the stereotypical bride that falls down the stairs, the apparition of the bride descending the stairs would be the residual haunt. The geographic psychic trauma is the actual energy imprint left behind from when she fell and lost her life.
Okay.
So that's the literal definition between the two. One can lead to the other.
But yeah, that was just one of the questions that I had because I've never heard of that before, and I found that interesting, and it makes sense with the residual haunts having that trauma there. In the book, one of the things I found interesting because you have here lately, I always find these synchronicities and these weird connections with different people that I talk to, and kind of one of the themes since I started season 3 here that I've been talking to a lot of authors is we've talked a lot about like your ghostly tropes of like these stereotypical ghost story type things, and the Phantom Hitchhikers are kind of one of those that everybody's heard about a Phantom Hitchhiker or a story because it's kind of become folklore and legend all around the country. And one of the things I did not realize until I was reading your book was the Phantom Hitchhikers in music and how kind of predominant that is a theme in music and songs that have been written.
That was such a fun chapter to write. And it actually, it kind of fell into my lap because I was telling my friend Jason, hey, I'm writing this book, I'm taking this major trip, going to visit, what was it? I think it was like 30 states in 24 days or something like that. I don't remember. It was a whirlwind trip, and it was a road trip too. It wasn't like we flew or took the train or anything. We were behind the wheel. But I'm telling my friend Jason, I'm like, looking for Phantom Hitchhikers. And he goes, oh, like the song Phantom 309. And I'm like, what? What is this song? And he's telling me about this song. And I started listening to it. I'm like, oh, wow. So I'm thinking, I may quote that song a little bit, finding other songs about Phantom Hitchhikers. And then I discovered that the Phantom 309 song was actually based on an actual event, not necessarily a Phantom Hitchhiker event, but the event that inspired the song was an actual car accident that took the life of a truck driver. He sacrificed himself. He was hauling a tanker full of gasoline from Massachusetts to Connecticut, and there were vehicles stopped for a school bus, and he dipped down into it was a really dangerous blind spot and didn't realize that there was a school bus full of children and another vehicle that was waiting for the school bus stopped, down below. When he realized what was going on, he turned the wheel and drove his tanker into the bridge abutment, sacrificing himself. All of the children and the bus driver made it out alive. The other vehicle, the driver of that vehicle, I think he sustained some pretty severe burns, but he also survived. And so that event inspired the Phantom Hitchhiker song, Phantom 309. But yeah, as I'm researching for, this song, so I can use a segment, I can, make a nod to it in the book. I'm discovering all of these other songs about Phantom Hitchhikers. I'm like, oh, I can do a chapter on this. So yeah, that was a fun chapter to write. And I have my friend Jason to thank for it.
Well, and it's interesting because I live outside of Nashville, and there was actually a bar called the Phantom 309 for a long, long time, just right down the street from me.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool. I don't know if I wrote about Midnight in Montgomery, a kind of a Phantom Hitchhiker song there in the Nashville area.
Yeah, about Hank Williams Sr.
Yeah, Hank Williams Sr. There was one about Hank Williams Sr. The Ride by David Allan Coe. I did write about that one. And that one is about the ghost of Hank Williams Sr. also. So, there's a lot of music. And Bringing Mary Home, that's a bluegrass song about a phantom hitchhiker. And that song reminded me more of Resurrection Mary, of that, that lore out of Justice, Illinois. Like I said, what a fun chapter to write, to research and write, going, wow, this is more popular than I thought.
Yeah. And it definitely caught my attention because I didn't realize, even I didn't even think about like Midnight Montgomery, like you were talking about, and that song's completely about the legend of Hank Williams Sr.'s hitchhiking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the fact that it's pervaded our culture enough, those stories, that they make it into songs, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, for one, you don't have a lot of, especially hit songs like Midnight Montgomery and The Ride by David Allan Coe, hit songs like that are about ghost,
Right. Like I said, that was fun to research and to make these discoveries. Going, oh, here's another one, or, oh, is this another one? Nope, it's not going to quite fit, with where I'm going with this. So it was really cool to see how Phantom Hitchhiker legends have really, influenced music.
Yeah. Another section that caught my attention is the Gravity Hill hauntings. Gravity Hill's actually in Nashville. There's a famous one in Nashville that's in it's actually in a city park now in Percy Warner Park. But yeah, they've got it blocked off, but people used to go up there all the time and park their cars, and the car would roll uphill instead of downhill like it should. And there's so many news stories that they used to do. And finally I think the city had an engineer go out there and show that it's just an optical illusion, that your car is rolling, not really rolling uphill. But they finally had to do that, and then they blocked it off so people would stop going out there and parking their cars on it because they were degrading this hillside.
Yeah. Gravity hills are, really a really popular roadside phenomena. When I was doing Phantom Hitchhikers, researching them, around the country, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of just haunted roadways in general. And the one thing that just kept popping up was the Gravity Hills, or Spook Hills. A lot of them are called Spook Hills. And most of them have been debunked. And so that was the one thing I wanted to point out. It's all fun and games, if you want to go and, put your car in neutral and, watch it seem to roll uphill. But for the most part, it is an optical illusion. You're actually going downhill. And the book actually walks you through how to debunk the fingerprints left on the back of the car.
Yeah.
And, the unseen hands, after you're driving down this dusty road and everything. The book actually talks about, how to debunk all of that so that you can obtain more credible data. If you encounter an area where you think, vehicles are being assisted by the unseen, here's how to prepare so that you've got credible data that you can use.
Yeah, and there's lots of those stories of not just like the Gravity Hill, like I was talking about, but of the supposed a bus full of children was hit at this railroad crossing. If you park your car, they'll push you over it. If you park your car on the train tracks, your car will get pushed over the train tracks, even though it's uphill. So that's even carried over to like those type of folklore and urban legends.
Yeah, and there were a few of those that I did research for the book and everything. And in doing my research, it's like I'm not finding any evidence at all that this actually happened. There are no news reports, no police reports, nothing that I could find that would indicate, that an accident like this actually happened. There's one Boy Scout Road, I want to say it's in Wisconsin. I don't have my notes in front of me, and I sold the last copy I had on hand of the book the other night, so I'm kind of doing this from memory. It's Boy Scout Road for sure, and I think it's in Wisconsin. It's in the the upper Midwest area, and there's all of these claims that a scoutmaster murdered the Boy Scouts, or the bus driver murdered the Boy Scouts, or they got lost, and the area in question, yes, it is called Boy Scout Road, and yes, it was owned by the Boy Scouts of America at one point in time, but the area was never used as a Boy Scout camp. There was never a Boy Scout troop there. The Boy Scouts were never harmed or killed in that area. it was an urban legend, that just got way out of control. And, it's a creepy area for sure. It's all private property now and you can't access it. But, for a long time, people would go, expecting to see, the ghosts of dead Boy Scouts and stuff. That location definitely made it into the book.
Yeah, and you were saying that it's a creepy area, and kind of that's what you imagine because the urban legend of the Phantom Hitchhiker, it's always a dark, desolate highway with trees hanging over is kind of what you always imagine, out in the middle of nowhere. But you have a lot of pictures in the book, and one of the things that I noticed was that some of these, they're like in the middle of town, or it's not kind of out secluded area. A lot of them are.
Right.
A lot of them are kind of creepy looking, but yeah, not all of them that have these stories are out in the middle of nowhere, like kind of just in the rural area. They're kind of in town or on busy traveled highways and interstates. And
yeah, there's one that I have been visiting for 10 or 15 years now. And it's Route 44 in Massachusetts, but between the towns of Rehoboth and Seekonk. And there is the legend of the red-headed hitchhiker. And unlike most Phantom hitchhikers, this one's a dude, wearing a flannel shirt and very disheveled and has a beard. And sometimes you are able to see him and actually give him a ride where he just, kind of points in a general direction and then vanishes. Other times you're driving down the road and he interrupts your car radio, with just this maniacal laughter. There's a lot of different versions. But up until about a year ago, I was a redhead. And, that a year ago, I decided to go blonde. But I would go to the Route 44 sign in Massachusetts between Rehoboth and Seekonk and stand underneath the sign, with my thumb sticking out and have my picture taken and be like, look, I found the redheaded hitchhiker. And it's a girl. And, so, I've been chasing that particular Phantom Hitchhiker legend for well over a decade now. And that's one of my favorites, actually, because the story has morphed in so many ways. And I was just talking to Christopher Balzano last night. He is a legend tripper. He used to be a paranormal researcher in Massachusetts, and he has since moved to Florida and switched from paranormal research to legend tripping. And he's actually very well versed on the whole Phantom Hitchhiker phenomenon. And we were discussing last night how the lore has morphed into now you have to stop right on the town line between Rehoboth and Seekonk, and you have to beep your horn 3 times and flash your lights in order to get him to appear. And so we're like, what? Where did this come from? We've been researching this dude for years, and we've never heard that. What? So the legends, they take on their own personality, their own persona, and that's part of what makes them so fun to research. Is you take one little heroic / tragic accident and it turns into a really very cool urban legend, and then it turns into a chart-topping song. So
yeah.
Like with Phantom 309, I just love how they take on a life of their own, and they morph. It makes them more difficult to research, but it makes them more fun to explore. It's like, well, which part is factual with this? Do you just drive down the road and turn on your FM radio station, or do you have to actually stop at the town limits and flash your lights and beep your horn? And
yeah, and there's lots of those legends, especially around bridges, that I've heard throughout the years that have morphed into that. You have to park on the bridge, turn your lights off, get out, walk 10 feet from the car. There's all these specifics.
Right. All of those really dangerous things to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing, you had mentioned Resurrection Mary earlier, and that's kind of one of the most famous Phantom Hitchhiker stories, that if you go by the cemetery, Resurrection Mary's there. But I didn't realize that there were so many others that revolve around cemeteries.
Yeah, there's a lot that revolve around cemeteries. There was a really interesting one that I researched in Arkansas. I want to say it was Highway 325, if I'm remembering correctly. I may have the numbers transposed a little bit. but it's a highway in Arkansas, and some of the reports say it's in one town and other reports say it's in another town. But the one common denominator is that there is a cemetery exactly halfway between those two towns. And that is right about that area of the cemetery where this Phantom Hitchhiker disappears. But yeah, Resurrection Mary didn't take a whole lot of research because everybody has heard of Resurrection Mary. The cool part for me was going to the cemetery, actually visiting the cemetery and doing an EVP session in the mausoleum, the enormous mausoleum. This mausoleum's like the size of my high school. It's enormous. I'm not kidding. It's enormous. And, just actually going to this famous historical, cemetery where this ghost lore is believed to take place. It was very humbling and surreal for me.
Yeah, it's because everybody, like you said, everybody knows that story. That's just one of those. I mean, it's been on even before the ghost hunting shows. That story's been on the History Channel
Unsolved
and all
Mysteries,
these other, that story's been everywhere. The other thing is not only cemeteries, but bridges and tunnels and covered bridges. I just find it interesting that these urban legends, these stories, they always revolve around certain areas. It's not just a roadside or kind of the bridges and tunnels are kind of pervasive throughout the legends too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two covered bridges that I covered in the book. One, of course, being Sachs Bridge in Gettysburg, and the other one being Goldbrook Bridge in Vermont, Stowe, Vermont. And the lore with Goldbrook Bridge was just so sad. They call it Katie's Bridge. Looking at the creek, and I don't know if I just wasn't there at the right time of year or whatever. I seriously don't think that she jumped off the bridge and drowned herself because there wasn't much to that creek. But that the Goldbrook Bridge goes over. But there are a lot, and I mean a lot, of stories of pedestrians and bicyclists traveling through that covered bridge and being scratched. And they're not superficial scratches, they're pretty serious scratches. And, in my research, just one after another that's being attributed to this young woman named Katie, who is believed to haunt the bridge. I did an EVP session there the day that I was taking photos for the book and everything. I didn't get anything with the EVP session, but it was the research, behind the lore is very heartbreaking. And that was another, humbling experience. And of course, Sachs Covered Bridge in Gettysburg, just to be in Gettysburg was awe-inspiring.
Yeah. Everything's haunted in Gettysburg just because of the loss of life there,
Well, and that goes back to GPT, the geographic psychic trauma there. It was so much violent, tragic, and sudden death in one concentrated area. It's no wonder at all that place just resounds with residual hauntings.
Yeah. We have another local legend here in Middle Tennessee that kind of fits into the Phantom Hitchhiker. And I've talked about it here on the show before, but it's called the White Bluff Screamer. And it's in White Bluff, Tennessee. And there's this one road that if you go down and you see a lady in white, so it kind of goes in, it's a kind of amalgam of a few different urban legends. But if you see a lady in white at night walking down this road and you pass her, she will chase your car and scream at you. Many people have claimed to have seen this lady. Many people claim to have heard her screaming. This one legend, I've found in researching it that it's actually from a few different legends. The cryptozoologist Ken Gerhardt has it in one of his books, but a lady said that she was parked in at a creek in White Bluff, and she got a little too inebriated to drive, so she slept in her car, and she woke up in the middle of the night with a big white Bigfoot looking creature in front of her car screaming at her.
Ooh.
So he put that in his book as the White Bluff Screamer. I've heard of the Phantom Hitchhiker, like I just said, and then there's also another legend about a circus train that derailed in the town back in the 1920s, 30s, and animals got loose, and so they attribute the White Bluff Screamer to the wolf man who got loose. And I don't know how that became the White Bluff Screamer, but it kind of morphed with this other legend called Werewolf Springs.
Right.
But I think maybe the train really did derail in the 1920s or 30s. A circus train really did. But I think where the legend comes from is they probably had llamas or alpacas,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody back then, you didn't have TV or like go to the zoo
Right.
per se, so nobody knew what a llama or alpaca looked like in this part of the country, and they kind of make a screaming noise.
They do kind
So
of
if
scream.
they're lost in the woods, if they're lost in the woods and people are just seeing this white animal that's furry that they don't recognize or understand that's just screaming, there becomes like an urban legend, local lore kind of built around it.
Yeah, and there's a similar legend in New Jersey. There was a zoo. The operating conditions of this zoo were very questionable, and it was no surprise that some of the animals got out, and some of those animals are believed to still wander the area to this day. Like some of the monkeys and stuff, which I find interesting. If they can survive winter in New Jersey without adequate shelter, because monkeys are primates, they need shelter. That's why their native habitat is in the jungle where it's warm and tropical. But their monkeys are not acclimated to snow. But it is believed that a lot of that the activity on this particular stretch of road in New Jersey is attributed to the animals that escaped from this zoo back in, I think it was the 70s. And, that they have somehow survived or reproduced or whatever, and they run wild in this desolate stretch of road near where that zoo used to be.
Yeah, to think that there's a mating population to make them, survive. And especially the conditions like you were saying in New Jersey. I mean, it gets really cold and lots of snow and things like that.
Right. So creatures like the monkeys and the kangaroos and the animals that need those warmer temperatures to survive, how they've acclimated to seasons in New Jersey, just baffles me. But allegedly, they're still there.
So throughout all your research into this, were there places where you caught EVPs or pictures or had experiences yourself that necessarily, I mean, even like personal experiences that necessarily, in the scientific method you can't prove, but just experiences all the same?
On the trip that I took to research these locations, not really, although there is one location here in Colorado called Riverdale Road between the towns of Thornton and Brighton, where the day after I was there taking my photograph for the book, there was a vehicle accident. And the driver of the car said, as they were swerving to miss the jogger disappeared. And lately this year, I did that research, last year, but this year there have been a number of accidents on Riverdale Road, and people are attributing those accidents to different phenomena that is, not of this world. And so right now the authorities are looking at changing speed limits and, putting in more cautionary devices, like guardrails and stuff like that, more reflectors so that people would be more careful. But there have been just in the last year a lot of real world accidents that are documented with police reports and news articles that people are attributing to paranormal phenomena.
Wow. And especially you got that many people reporting after having an accident. Yeah, there's got to be something to that.
Yeah, the driver of the vehicle that crashed the day after we were there taking the photos was so shaken up and, went on the news saying, I heard the stories, but I didn't believe it. There was a man jogging and he disappeared.
Wow.
I swerved to avoid him and he disappeared. Yeah. And so, of course, the authorities and the media, they're all going, if you know anything about this or who the jogger may have been, or if you are the jogger, please come forward so that this poor driver doesn't think they're crazy.
Right. Right.
And, and of course, nobody came forward because they don't want to be blamed for, causing an accident. So was it an actual person that caused the accident? I don't know. Was it the spirit of a jogger that caused the accident? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I just found it really amusing that the day after I was there to photograph that area, there was a vehicle accident that is being attributed to paranormal activity.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
also, what would a person have to gain to go on the news and say that?
Yeah, that just makes them look nuts.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I've got a friend who works on the ambulance, and they were going to a wreck on the interstate. Well, they couldn't find the wreck, and they went up and turned around on the interstate and were coming back down the other way, and there was a guy on a bicycle riding down the side of the interstate. They pulled over and said, "Have you seen anybody wreck out here? We can't find, where this person is wrecked." The guy on the bicycle didn't say a word. He pointed across the interstate into a bank of trees. Didn't say a word. So they said, "All right, thank you." They went up, turned around, and came back, and they found the guy's vehicle like way off in the trees. And they said if this person on this bike hadn't pointed in that direction, they would have never found this guy.
Wow.
Yeah, because of how he went off the road. There was no marks or anything, to say that he had went off the road there. And my buddy is like, I don't know if that person was real on the bike. He's like, it was just how often do you see somebody riding a bicycle on the middle, on the side of the interstate?
Right. Well, and why would, and I use this term lightly, a normal person would have stopped.
Yeah.
And waited for authorities going, hey, the wreck is here.
Yeah.
So why didn't the bicyclist stop? Or, that's just, wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, and he's a paranormal investigator too, and he's like, I can't chalk it up to paranormal, but he's like, I don't know how to explain that. This guy was just in the right place at the right time, and he said he never said a word. He just pointed, which makes it even creepier to me.
Right.
That he just pointed, and they found
right.
the guy, directly on the other side of the interstate from where the guy pointed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very redheaded hitchhiker, Route 44. The hitchhiker, when he does accept a ride, he'll get in the car and, where am I taking you? And he just points.
Yeah. Yeah, I just find the phenomenon interesting. And the fact that you have gone and collected a lot of these stories in the book and investigated them, because there are so many people that do die in car wrecks on the side of roads, interstates, back roads, everywhere you can think of. And hopefully, my hope is that these people still aren't there, that maybe it just is
right.
an imprint of them, that, their soul has gone on to where it should have gone, and they're not hanging around on the side of the interstate. Yeah,
that's the optimist version to the scenario, is that the geographic psychic trauma, did not result in a residual haunting. That's the optimism. What has happened here? What is the result? And so, depending on which way you want to look at it, which way you want to spin it, it's a good thing we didn't uncover, copious amounts of phantom hitchhikers at these roadside locations.
Yeah. A lot of the places you went probably, they still have family living and things like that of these people that were killed there. And so
right.
I would hope for the family that, that person's still not there.
Yeah. For the family's sake, that their loved one is resting in peace, and that's another aspect, of what we as paranormal researchers do. If, on the rare occasion, when we are able to conclusively uncover, the identity of the spirit haunting a location, what do we do with that information? And one of the EVP questions that we like to ask, is there a message we can pass on to someone for you? Because if it is an issue of unfinished business or, needing to get a message to a family member, that might be a way that we can help them and hopefully resolve the haunting that way, by being able to help the entity in question. But, it's so rare when we can actually determine the identity of the person who is haunting a location.
Right.
So, again, we like to ask that question, is there a message we can pass on to someone for you? So that if we are dealing with an intelligent entity, hopefully we can, provide them some assistance as well.
Yeah, and maybe they'll move on after that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, everybody should go out and grab a copy of your book, The Phantom Hitchhiker Project and America's Haunted Roadways. And like I said, I'll put links in the show notes. And they can find more about you on your website. What else do you have coming up? And I know that this book just came out not very long ago, but what else you have coming up here soon?
Like any good author, I've got about 6 manuscripts in the works. Yeah. So I don't know which one is going to take over my life next, but it's always kind of exciting to see, which one say, okay, my turn. And, and I work on them and get them finished.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too, and I love the book. I think it's definitely interesting to dive into, even if it's just urban legends and there's no truth to any of these. It's just fun to dive into the backstories and stuff. And everybody go check out the Phantom Hitchhiker Project, America's Haunted Roadways, and Clarissa Vasquez's other books on Amazon, Kindle, wherever fine books are sold. Also at her website, and you can also find her on the social medias.
Yep, that's very true. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Colorado Paranormal. Twitter is at C Vasquez Author, and my website is cvasquezauthor.com.
All right, Clarissa, thank you so much. Everybody out there, stay safe. Have a good day. We'll see you next time. Join us next time for a new episode of The Unseen Paranormal. Until then, head over to the Unseen Paranormal Lounge on Facebook for all the latest updates and discussions about the show. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, or at unseenparanormalpodcast.com. And please rate, review, share, and subscribe to help more people discover the show. The Unseen Paranormal Podcast is proud to be the ambassador for paranormal for Verbal.com. A big thank you to my friend Chris Lips for the awesome theme music. You can find more of his music on Apple, Amazon, or Spotify. And as always, thank you for listening.
You have come to the end of the line. As you pass the other side, as if I even lied.